All right, trade deadline week continues here on the sheet. Welcome to it for this Wednesday, March the 4th. Glad to be along with you today. And a couple of moments before we hit the airwaves here, another trade in the NHL, Vancouver and Dallas hooking up in a rare one. If you know the acrimony between these two teams, the ownership specifically, you might raise the Spockian eyebrow as you see Tyler Myers move from the Vancouver Canucks to the Dallas Stars. A 2027 second round pick and a 29 fourth round pick going to the Vancouver Canucks here. Some more help for the right side of the Dallas Stars. 50% retention. So now Tyler Myers is a member of the Dallas Stars, who have won 10 games in a row, by the way. Hottest team in the NHL. They have Tyler Myers for this season at what is left of $1.5 million and a full $1.5 million next season. So Jim Nill gets a little bit of business done today. Meanwhile, Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin continue the scale down of this era's Vancouver Canucks. More to come. More to come on this show as well. So let's get right to the blueprint, which is, of course, powered by FanDuel. Download the app today and play your game. Trades, and more trades. We'll see what happens by the time we get to 3 o'clock Eastern on Friday. Someone who's very familiar with this time of the year is Brian Burke, who never really loved trade deadline, but we'll get his thoughts on it. He was more like, I was going through Burke's resume and when he made trades. Man, Brian Burke loved a November trade. We'll ask Burke about that coming up here in a couple of moments. We'll get an inside peek of what it's like from a general manager's perspective, what we expect for Friday. We'll get some listener questions, whether it's email or voicemail for Brian Burke. Dave Pagnotta, DFO Insider, will stop by on the latest buzz around the league, whether it's trades or whether it's signings as well. And some big names are still very much out there, including Robert Thomas of the St. Louis Blues. All that coming up over the next 60 minutes-ish here on the program. Let's bring Brian Burke aboard, who is on location at Coca-Cola Coliseum. The Toronto Marlies facing off against Cleveland. Is it Cleveland's in town today, right? Facing off against the Marlies?
Correct.
All right. So you get to see one of my favorite people, Brendan Gaunce from the legendary Gaunce, Markham Waxer's family of the OMHA, amongst other players. First of all, anyone jumping out at you, Scout Burke?
I'd say Bell Balbalous is having a real good game, and so is Gaunce. Gaunce scored the fourth goal. He looks good.
Yeah, him and his brother Cam. Cam's now retired and working in broadcasting as well. Talented family, the Gaunces. Okay, so the very latest is, and I want to get into sort of the nature of what this deadline or what other deadlines are like, and from a manager's point of view. But Tyler Myers goes from the Vancouver Canucks to the Dallas Stars. Now, longtime observers might look at this and say, "Wow." A deal between the Vancouver Canucks and the Dallas Stars. We understand the acrimony between the owners, but nonetheless, business gets done. Tyler Myers waves. He goes to Texas. A second and a fourth go the other way. Vancouver retains on 50%. So Dallas has themselves a right shot defenseman for this year and next year for $1.5 million, to which Brian Burke says what?
I like it. I like Tyler Myers a lot. I think he's a really good player. He's not a rental. He's a player who's born in Texas. Actually, he's got this year and next. I like him. He's big. Got a hard shot. Can play in your third. Can play in the 3-hole or 4-hole. Play in the 5 or 6-hole. Kill penalties. I like him.
You know, Dallas has won 10 games in a row, and now their blue line with, of course, Liam Bichel, who's 6'7", and now you add Tyler Myers, who's around the same. All of a sudden, that blue line just got even bigger, fitting the stereotype of everything Berkey is bigger in Texas.
Not to say you need depth. You know this, Jeff. To win in the playoffs, you need depth. Tyler Myers might not even be in the lineup every night right away. So they sort things out because they've won so many games in a row. But he will play. He will be a valuable asset. I like this. I like the price, too. I think Patrick Allvin got a good deal back.
On a side note here too, we know that the Detroit Red Wings had a standing offer for Tyler Myers as well. They were in, but obviously didn't want to pay the price for Quinn Hughes, Rasmus Anderson, and again another one that Detroit. I don't know how serious the swing was, but took a swing at as well. This is another tough one for Steve Yzerman and the Detroit Red Wings, who we know want another top 4 defenseman. What do you do if you're Steve Yzerman here? I know he's very mindful of price. I get that. Doesn't want to overpay. But does it ever get to a point where you're like, man, we wanted Hughes, we didn't get him. We wanted Raz, we didn't get him. We wanted Myers, we didn't get him. Maybe we do have to overpay here at deadline to get what we want.
Or here's a concept: stick to your budget and not get anyone. Don't overpay for anyone. What an idea! Think about this. I checked with the league, by the way.
Yeah.
They're only awarding one cup. So those trades fall into one of three categories. One of them is going all the way in. Going all the way in does not make sense for the Red Wings.
The other thing that I because I know you check in on the Stanley Cup, I check in on one thing as well with the league on a consistent basis, and I checked again. All 32 teams are allowed to try. They're all allowed to compete. They're all allowed to try to win this, even though only one cup's going to be awarded. All 32 teams are allowed to try, Berkey.
Look at the wreckage that leaves behind when 5 teams go for it. There's only one parade. I've been watching this for years. I'm pretty sure it's not going to change. There's one parade, and all the rest of it, all these guys who give second and first and good young players, that's all wreckage. That's all a postmark.
The only thing about it, and I think we can make this point as well with a team like the Buffalo Sabres, who haven't been in the playoffs in 14 years. The big win is always the Stanley Cup, and that's obvious. But getting there are small victories along the way. Like, look, we don't even call the rink in Detroit a new arena anymore. It's just a rink that hasn't had a playoff game in it yet. Like for the Ilitch family, and you know the Ilitch family, they would like to have some playoff revenue, and they would like to see that barn with some playoff games in it. Thank you very much. Ditto Terry Pagula with the Buffalo Sabres. Now, both these two teams are trending towards going to the playoffs. They've had really good seasons. So could that be, in a manager's mind, considered, and this probably comes right down from ownership, the idea that, sure, the cup is the big win, but we need some little wins along the way here. Let's do whatever it takes to get into the playoffs without damaging ourselves long term.
Yeah, well, that's the key, is without damaging yourself. Do whatever it takes. That's ridiculous. Jeff, there's 3 categories of trades. One is to go for it all. I get it. You think you're close to go for it all? I get it. That's where the wreckage comes, but that's a noble pursuit. Once you get close, you got to try. Your players are looking at you saying, what are you going to sit there and watch all day? But there's 2 other categories of teams that are trying to get better. One is a team trying to make the playoffs, like a Buffalo, like a Detroit. It makes sense for them to add, even if they can't win more than one round or even don't win one round. You don't make a lot of money if you lose in the first. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. But it still has value. The second category of teams are teams that think they can win a second round or make some noise, to use that term. That makes sense too. But the price tag should never be the same as category 1 and category 2 for going for it.
You know, the Red Wings are an interesting story. The Buffalo Sabres are an interesting story. A lot of rumors around Buffalo. Darren Dreger put out the tweet yesterday about the Sabres and Blues engaged in a discussion and moving it along for Robert Thomas. And then, a number of names popped up, online that were attached to the trade, whether it's Consta Hellenius or Owen Power and Jack Quinn and these types of players as well. We know it's going to be a significant return. But, I look at Robert Thomas, and he's one of the more skilled centers in the NHL, one of the best playmakers in the NHL. I've always maintained that, the points have been low around Robert Thomas by his standards because he hasn't had guys that can finish. Bless Jordan Kyrou, but he's not a finisher. Pavel Buchnevich has had a soft couple of seasons as well. If you're Jarmo Kekalainen here, and let me frame it this way, Berkey. Managers love having their own face card. The guy that they look at and say, that's my guy. Like, you've done this in a number of places where you've gone, right? Like, there's like trades that you make sort of picking around the edges, but managers want their face card. If you're Jarmo Kekalainen, and Dreger shot down this morning, said, they got as far as they did, but it didn't end up getting over the finish line. When you're a manager, if you're Jarmo Kekalainen, could Robert Thomas be your face card move?
I saw Robert Thomas play as the year he turned pro. Saw him play against the Sioux in the playoffs. Saw him play twice. I love this player, but I think he's had a tough couple of years. I'm not sure. The injuries not sure he trains hard enough, is my own view. I have no backup for that, just my own view. And I'd be nervous about paying a huge price for this player.
Also around the NHL, we saw a couple of really interesting scenarios last night in the Nashville-Columbus game. First of all, Columbus really needed that one to stay alive, and they again trailed against the Preds, but came back to win that thing a day after going down 4-0 to the Rangers and coming back to win it in overtime. Kirill Marchenko with the heroics there. But Michael McCarron, the big center for the Nashville Predators, gets held out for roster-related reasons. He ends up getting traded to the Minnesota Wild. Bottom six, he's a center. Minnesota, I think they're like second or third last in the league in faceoffs. Michael McCarron's always been up around 54%. That one makes sense. It is a second-round pick. We can all quibble about the value of a second-round pick with the Minnesota Wild. And then, we had this really bizarre situation yesterday where Cole Smith starts the game for the Nashville Predators, plays 3 seconds, leaves, goes into the room, comes back, sits next to UC Saros all game long, and then gets traded to the Vegas Golden Knights for a third-round pick after the game. We know why he was there for roster reasons to ice a lineup, but it just looked, I'll be blunt, Berkey, it just looked weird. It was a 3-second shift. He was out there on the wing for the drop, and he did a couple of circles, and then left the bench, and then all he did was talk to UC Saros for the remainder of the game. You ever thought on that one at all?
In what language did he talk to him?
I'm guessing English, but I don't know. Maybe he speaks Finnish too. I don't know.
You know how hungry you get when you don't play in a game? You eat your pregame meal around 1 o'clock, 1:30 at the latest. Yeah. Then you have a little snack at 4. You're dying to eat something. He must have been starving. I bet you had 2 hot dogs on the bench.
We think of our friend John Garrett, who, when he was a backup goaltender of the Quebec, I want to say in the WHA, didn't think that he was going to play, and so he was chowing on a couple of hot dogs. And I can't remember, Jacques Demers might have been the coach. Tapped him on the shoulder. There was a scrum in front. Demers ended up pulling the goalie, and Cheech had to go in. He stuffed the hot dog down his pad. Another scrum in front of the Nordiques net, and sure enough, right in the middle of the crease, Cheech's hot dog jumps out and lay there on the ice. The pro hockey's first hot dog on the ice from a goaltender. Anyhow.
Well, let me tell you about that one. The year before I got to Anaheim, or 2 years before, Ilya Bryzgalov was playing in Kentucky in the American League. Ilya Bryzgalov was backing up the Thoroughblades. You had to sit across the ice, remember?
Yeah.
You didn't sit with your team.
Great.
You sat across the ice for the backup goaltender. So Briz had 2 hot dogs. He gave the kid $10 to get him a couple of hot dogs. Francois Allaire, our goalie coach, has never forgotten or forgiven him for that. To this day, he said, he's not professional. He had a hot dog during the game. I said, Francois, he had 2. He had 2.
Il mange deux, pas un. 2 hot dogs for Briz.
Cole Smith got something to eat during that game.
Yeah, I would imagine so, because he wasn't getting on the ice and he was packing his bags. It's interesting, too. I was talking to Alan May last night on the Caps broadcast, and I can recall, a few years ago, St. Louis Blues, and Patrick Berglund's name had been all over the rumors. Like, Patrick Berglund was going somewhere, and the Blues were on a road trip. And I talked to someone with the organization, and they said to me, we've never seen anyone with more luggage on a road trip. Like, he had like 4 full suitcases thinking, I'm not going back to St. Louis. Now, he didn't end up getting traded, had to lug them all back to St. Louis. But when you're a manager, would you ever say to a player like, look, we're on a road trip and you're probably not coming back home. You might want to pack some extra luggage here. Or do you just not say anything? Like, I'm always wondering about players that get traded when the team's on the road.
Well, I think you can warn a player that it might happen, but I don't think you can tell him what to wear or what to bring. I think you can say to a player, look, and I did this many times. I would call in a player and say, look, your name's come up repeatedly. I have not talked to one team about you, not one. That might change. I get the right offer. You're on a plane, son, but I have not talked to one team about you. Just keep that in mind. And so the turnout, I told Bobby Holik that, traded him a week later. I had not talked to anyone, but Lou Lamoriello called right after I said that. So I don't think you can tell a guy, tip him off that much. You can tell if it's coming, if you think it's coming. I think your players are entitled to that much.
Hang on a second here. We have, what are we doing? It sounds like Kiefer Sherwood has signed an extension. Elliot says it sounds like a 5-year deal. Just under $6 million AAV. First of all, I'm really happy for Kiefer Sherwood for getting that contract. I like the player a lot. Playoff style guy, scored last night for the San Jose Sharks first time, and he's been injured first in 5 games for Kiefer Sherwood. Do you have a thought on that one, Berkey? 5-year deal, just under 6 AAV for Kiefer Sherwood.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of money and a lot of term. I like the player too, but that's look, the cap's going up. They're going to see excessive deals. This one is excessive in my mind. It'll level out over time. Like as the summer goes on, this will appear to be reasonable.
Any names you're curious about specifically? I mentioned Robert Thomas a couple of seconds ago. I mean, listen, Connor Garland is his name is very much out there for the Vancouver Canucks. Vancouver's nowhere close to finishing wheeling and dealing here. I think we all wonder about Elias Pettersson, and never forgetting that before he signed his contract extension, the Carolina Hurricanes were interested there. Other teams with other players. I think the Florida Panthers now. We all wonder about Sergei Bobrovsky. I've wondered about him and San Jose. Others have wondered about him maybe and Montreal. Given the Edmonton's inability to get saves, maybe Edmonton could make some sense there with retention. Any names out there, Berkey, that you're particularly curious about right now?
Not those two. The money involved for Garland and Elias Pettersson, I'm not interested in either one of them. But I think they'll both move.
You think Pettersson will go somewhere?
Yeah, I do.
Garland's no trade protection kicks in with his new deal on July 1st. Islanders rumored with Garland. I don't think the Boston Bruins are done trying to get Connor Garland as well. But why not either of those two for you, Berkey?
Too much money, too much term.
Yeah.
Even with retention, which would be insane, to retain half on either one of those guys.
Yeah.
The haul you got back would have to be huge to get to move to retain salary.
A couple of questions here for you, Berkey, and we'll get back to a couple of things here. This from Steve Ness. With a 3 p.m. Eastern deadline, how does trade deadline day differ for a manager on the East Coast versus West Coast? Perfect for you, Berkey. You've done both.
Same deal every day. You get up early. I mean, when I worked on the West Coast, I was at work at 6 o'clock. You guys know that.
Yeah.
And that's how you deal with the time difference. When the Boston Bruins were open for business, so were the Anaheim Ducks.
One of the things, and we don't really see this happen very much at trade deadline, but there are some teams that really need goaltending, and a couple of teams specifically in Canada. Now, I keep going back and forth on the idea that Edmonton's done with their goalie moves and their ride or die with their two right now. Montreal has seen some good work get squandered by bad goaltending here. I always think, Berkey, of the line by Harry Sinden, where he said, goaltending is like oxygen. I don't think about it until I don't have it. And then when I don't have it, it's all that I can think about. Are these teams like feeling the oxygen around not getting goaltending right now, Edmonton and Montreal?
Well, Edmonton, you have to believe in the guy you traded for. You traded for Tristan Jarry. I believe in Tristan Jarry. They traded for him on that belief. He has not played well recently. That doesn't mean he's not going to play well. Doesn't mean it's time to cave in and say, okay, we need a goaltender. Tristan Jarry is a guy I believe in. I think he will bounce back. But right now, yeah, he's scuffling. Montreal, they give up some quality chances, boy. I think they give up more high danger chances. Valaquette's going to tell me I'm wrong, but they give up more high danger chances than anyone I've seen. The goaltending is really difficult in Montreal. They give up a mistake. It's a doozy.
Here's one from Vivek Kalia. What is the craziest or most chaotic trade deadline story you can tell from your time as a general manager? And I do, by the way, want to mention, I went back, Berkey, and I had a look at your history of trades. Now, I know you don't like trade deadline, and just like you don't like July 1st, so you tended to stay away from those, except for 2006, where you made a flurry of deals with the Anaheim Ducks. But man, you loved a November trade. I'm going to get back to that in a second. But do you have a chaotic trade deadline story from your time as general manager?
Well, my 1 year is when I was the acting GM in Calgary. I remember Ryan Kessler was getting traded. And we kept holding out for Mike Camilleri. We kept holding out for a second round pick or a first round pick. And we thought we were going to get it, but Ryan Kessler wouldn't move. Finally, we dropped our price right before the deadline. The night before, I called all the teams and said, all right, I'm not getting a first. I'll take a second. Turns out I didn't even get a second. I got offered a third for Camilleri from Lou Lamoriello. I said no. I'd rather try and re-sign him and keep him than lose him for a third. So we kept him. Now that was crazy because Ryan Kessler, I forget where he ended up going, but it held up 20 teams.
Yeah. You know, the interesting thing about that, you've told me this before, one of the reasons why you didn't want to make that move is, and this is where reputation comes into a lot of these things, and it might be short-term pain, but it's long-term gain, that you don't want to have the reputation as the manager who's going to cave at the last minute, because teams will say, you know what, just let Berkey sweat it out. At the end, he's going to cave and he's going to give you your price. How much of that is in the back of your mind here when you're waiting on these deals?
Well, a year later, Tree was the GM, and he made a deal where I think the fact that we had not taken a poor deal helped him make a really good deal with Washington. So in my mind, I think the reputation is important. Even though I was gone, I think it helped Tree. And we're not going to make a poor deal. I'd rather make no deal than a poor deal.
So, as I mentioned, you never were a huge fan of trade deadline. You did like November trades, it seems. But 2006, you made a flurry. You brought in Sean O'Donnell. You traded him for Joel Perreault. You picked up Jeff Friesen, and you sent the Caps a second-round pick that turned into Keith Seabrook. You picked up Brett Skinner and a second in exchange for Keith Carney. Oh, I like Keith Carney. Carney and Juha Allen. And then you sent Sandis Ozolinsh to the New York Rangers in exchange for a third-round draft pick. Of course, 2006 as well was when you made the Chris Pronger deal with the Edmonton Oilers. But why did you always generally stay away from trade deadline? And man, did you love making deals in November, Berkey. Man, you loved it.
You got the player for the most time if you made it November. October, it's hard to make many deals. Once you get to know your team, make a deal in November, you get that player for the longest part of the year, or players or picks or whatever. So to me, it made sense. Let's get our team together early. Let's get the new guys in there and see what we can do.
Okay, let's get an email in here. Zach, do you have the email from Jack standing by for Berkey? This is a really good one. Zach, you there?
One sec.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me read this for you. So this is from Jack Bowie. Question for Berkey. My 13-year-old son, Maxime, and I always stream your podcast interviews in the truck during our hockey trips to games around the province of New Brunswick. That's where my family settled, coming in from Ireland in the 1860s. Recently, I got him to listen to your audiobook. He loved your stories and insight, as do I. Now, to the questions. Which one you pick one that you want to answer. In all your years as general manager, oh, here we go. What was the biggest trade deadline day surprise? Or 2, describe your typical trade deadline routine, i.e., what is your setup? How do you communicate with other NHL GMs? How do you stay on top of the media and rumors that swirl, if in fact you even do that? Take your choice from Jack.
Well, I'm not a big deadline guy, so I'd say number 2 is probably easier to answer. You got all your key guys, your pro scouts, your assistant GMs, everyone's in the room. You got 2 TVs on, one for Sportsnet, one for TSN. My routine involved doing one interview every year with James Duthie. and giving them a one-word answer, just hanging them out to dry, hanging them out to dry on national TV. Got to be a tradition where you can say, "So Brian, think you do anything else in this deadline?" Say no, dead silence, and James up there have to scramble.
Hey,
I got it every year.
Hey James, I know the feeling, James. If you're watching, I know the feeling, pal. Put it this way: if Berkey gives you a one-word answer to hang you out to dry, don't feel special. Don't feel special, James.
But you got guys working all the phones. So your assistant GM here, so Dallas is in on Tyler Myers, and they tell you that right away. So you got a constant flow of information. You got to sift through it, stay on top of it. But again, I think the trade deadline is like the Kmart blue light specials. Had the blue light on and all the carts bumping into each other, and no one gets run over or pays.
You know, I know there was one scenario where someone from team. Oh, by the way, one thing. Jack also adds, as a Red Wings fan, Sider looks like your kind of player, Berkey. Agree, disagree?
I love him, but he's a very complete player. He's way better than I thought he was going to be his draft year. Yeah. He's turned into a really good offensive player, really good two-way player. He's also physical, right shot. I love him. He'll be the captain there for a long time, is my prediction.
Absolutely. You know, one of the questions there was about media from Jack, and you know, there's one general manager who I don't want to say it was notorious or famous, because I'm sure this happened in a lot of different places too, but in the war room had every single person put their cell phones on the table because this manager wanted to see who was calling them on trade deadline day. Were you ever a kind of guy like that, Berkey, where all the phones on, I want to see who's calling you on trade deadline day?
I wanted people to call me. I trusted my guys. That's just ignorant. I don't know who it was, but that's just dumb. You got people calling, telling you stuff that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. This is, I'm not even gonna hint at who the manager was, but this is someone of particular note. I just thought that was interesting too. That I don't know if that's a sort of sign of.
Sounds like Lou.
It's not Lou. I will give you that one. That is not Lou, but it does very much sound like all messages need to come to me, not to you. You know, tell them to call me. That's very much Lou Lamoriello. Okay.
But actually, you got Dave Nonis in the room. Dave Nonis is plugged in as well as anyone. Yeah. He gets a call from someone. They're thinking of moving this guy. He runs to me and says, "Hey, by the way, we should get in on this." Bob Murray, when he was my assistant GM, these are all important people to have on the phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before I let you go here, one more thing from trade deadline day, which is on the horizon. At what point? Because I'm always curious about this. Managers will say, "This is my final offer." Like the negotiation, like when you're competing with another team for a player, and one team says, "Okay, I'm going to give you this window here. Give me your best offer." Is that really the best offer? Or like, how do you react when someone says, "Yeah, you know what? We got this offer from you, but this guy's going to give you this. We've already talked about it at this price, but now I need to go back to you on it." Like, how often does that happen amongst managers where all of a sudden the price changes, even though you may think you have a deal?
Well, I think first off, once you think you have a deal, I think it's time to shake hands, call the league. But up until then, someone can say it's their best offer. I'd say, you're saying that's your best offer. It doesn't do it for me, so you can improve it if you want. He says, "No, it's my best offer." I'd say, all right, then we're done. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, this all hinges on the trust you develop with the GMs. You got to have a relationship with them. Paul Holmgren says to me, "This is my last offer. If you don't do this, I'm doing something else." He's doing something else.
Awesome. Who are your favorites, by the way, to deal with?
Back in the day, Lou was a thief, but an honest thief. Good guy. Paul Holmgren was real honest. Most of the guys were good. There are a few I couldn't deal with.
Yeah, it's interesting too, the way that I mean, everybody gravitates to certain people to do business with. I don't know why. I don't know why people get on managers for dealing with similar other managers on a consistent basis. Everybody does business with who they're comfortable with. And end of
You
story.
end up with trading partners, guys you trust. End up going back to them more often, especially if you make a deal that works for both teams. Glenn Sather was always a real honest guy. I made a trade with Glenn Sather. He traded me a guy named Reitz. Showed up with an ankle brace on, an ankle cast on. I called Slats and said, "You traded me an injured player." He said, "Send him back on the spot." No, we didn't. We worked it out, but that's how honest Glenn was.
I think Glenn was also the guy that fluffed up the shot block numbers for who was it? Oh, okay, who was it? Was it DeVries? Said he fluffed up shot block numbers, so the Flyers thought that they were getting a killer.
We drafted Pavel Bure.
Yeah.
Glenn Sather wrote the league and said that they were disputing the pick. Glenn Sather wrote the league and said they should uphold this pick on Vancouver's behalf. A divisional opponent, just to help us, because he was an honest guy. I love Slats.
Dan McGillis. That's who it was. This is before they're tracking shots and everybody had all the stats. They just like fluffed up all the shot block. Like every game he was blocking like 12 shots. He had like 14 hits a game. So like Dan McGillis was a good defender, but like
good player.
I think the Philadelphia Flyers thought they were getting a killer, but that was, Glenn Sather with a little bit of Glenn Sather magic. Was it Doug Wilson that you always wanted to do deals with but could never get it over the finish line? Was it Doug?
I really had trouble getting the deal done with Doug and Darcy Regier too. I had no luck with Darcy. Finally made one deal with Darcy, but I had no luck with Doug. Doug was always talking French when I was talking English.
You're the best. Enjoy the rest of the Marlies game here against Cleveland. Best of Brendan Gaunce and Luca Del Bel Baluz, a couple of players. And also Riley Bezo, who's Andy Bezo's son, who won a Memorial Cup in St. John. If anyone knows anything about Andy Bezo, you know how raw bone tough this player was from Atlantic Canada, Berkey, as is his. I think his son is as tough as the old man, but he's still a pretty tough kid.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think anyone's that guy. The old man was tough and a little bit loony too.
Andy Bezo was, put it this way, he played on the Niagara Falls Thunder with Brad May, and even Brad May said, yeah, he was tough. So when Mayday is saying that someone is tough, you know that guy is tough.
Oh yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the game, pal. We'll talk again in 7 days.
Thanks,
trade deadline.
Thanks.
Here's Brian Burke from Coca-Cola Coliseum joining us at the Toronto Marlies Cleveland game. And Zach, are you there? Because I know we're trying to fire something up here in a couple of seconds. Where are we at getting Dave on? Are we good?
He's ready. He's good.
How's your day been over there?
It's good. Between getting everything ready for today and putting all the trade boards and everything, trying to monitor what's happening.
Okay, let's
get the show. I can't complain. It's just there's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. I'm trying to stay on top of it. So
everybody loves to hear
fun.
media. Everyone loves to hear media complain about their jobs and loves to hear media complain about travel and hotels. Oh, they just love that. Let's get Dave aboard. Dave Pagnotta, DFO insider from the fourth period. And he has been everywhere and busy and is having no sleep, but I cannot believe I don't think at 3:01, but maybe like later on Friday evening. Like, are you already starting to have like immigrant fantasies about like what sleep is going to be like on Friday night, Dave? Like, oh, this is going to be so nice. The streets are paved with gold in Sleepyland on Friday.
I'm getting extra pillows. I'm doing mega comforters, the heated blanket if I need it, just to be prepped for it, just everything.
Gotcha.
And then I don't want to look at my coffee machine, my espresso machine for like a week.
Yeah,
it's working overtime.
I get it. The phone and the coffee machine gets a workout. Well, so I'm going to sort of jump all over the place here. Well, just focus on the latest. So Tyler Myers goes from the Vancouver Canucks to the Dallas Stars. First of all, as an aside, anybody who understands the acrimony between the two families, Vancouver and Dallas, probably raises an eyebrow and says, like, okay, well, we have seen some minor deals between the two before, but put it this way, these two teams are not going out of their way to help one another, but here it is.
No,
now,
correct.
Tyler Myers had trade protection he was willing to lift, and so we end up here. Does Dallas surprise you at all for this one?
No, they were kind of in it from the start, and the start being when these talks reemerged about 10 days ago. I think it was not this past weekend, the weekend before, where Detroit entered the mix with their second round pick, and then Dallas was kind of poking around. There were a few other teams that I think were kind of poking on that front as well. But his preference was always to be out west. He wants to be as close to Vancouver as he can, which is where his family is. His son has certain requirements health-wise that are being addressed in Vancouver, so he wanted to make sure that A, he was close to that, and B, that wherever he ended up, there was the possibility of helping out in that regard. So in this case, Detroit started to look around yesterday or Monday evening because they were hoping to get an answer by the end of the weekend. Right. That didn't happen, so they started to fish for additional options. Dallas was doing the same. Dallas, I was told, keep an eye on Rasmus Ristolainen. He was definitely a target for the Dallas Stars. I'm not sure where that's at officially. I assume now that they got Myers that's no longer going to be the case. But I don't know that definitively just yet, but they were very much in that. And now to bring in Myers at $1.5 million with the Canucks eating half, they've used up their second retention slot. They're saving the third one for Evander Kane by all accounts. And then Kane and Mikheyev, who they are paying right now, those come off the books in July. So they'll have two full slots available with Myers next season. But they did him a solid, and they got a pretty solid return out of it as well. Even though they're eating, half of that deal, $1.5 million, they still get their second round pick next season, and they get a fourth round pick in a few years after that. So decent amount of business there, and it allows them to focus on others like Kane and Garland and so on in Vancouver.
Vancouver's interesting too, because I've been under the impression, when Rutherford Alvin sent a note out saying listing on our players, and then a couple of weeks later, Quinn Hughes goes to the Minnesota Wild, and the season proceeds as it has, and they find themselves last in the NHL and lottery pick, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I still believe that they didn't think that they were going to take a massive step backwards and maybe use the lowercase r with rebuild. Now, do you think that Vancouver, because it's starting to feel this way, they're using capital R rebuild, not lowercase r, capital R?
The whole word's in caps. They're going full for it. They're going full steam ahead with the rebuild. Now, because of the return they got for Quinn, it may be a little bit of an escalated rebuild because those pieces are going to be, ready to go in terms of hitting their peak well in advance of, whatever draft picks and pure prospects they land. But it's full across the board. If they can make additional moves, like Connor Garland is very much available. That mindset has shifted in the last bit. This week, the Islanders and Boston were two teams that were trying to get into that mix. I don't think it's going to end up in that direction, but those are two teams that were poking around and had serious conversations with Vancouver about it. But there are others that are in the mix, and it seems like Vancouver might be swaying in a different direction there versus Boston and the Islanders. But still 2 days to go. We'll see if anybody circles back. But he's very much there. Drew O'Connor's getting a ton of interest. Bluger's available. I mentioned Kane as well. Mm-hmm. DeBrusk also, where he officially or unofficially mentioned that he wants out to the media on Monday. So there are a lot of moving parts there, but they are willing to do whatever it takes and move as many guys as it takes to follow in this trend. And if there are more deals that come their way, they're going to seriously look at it. And if it makes sense, they'll pull the trigger. I think they're going to be still pretty active. And like I said, those guys, they're fully engaged in those conversations with other teams about them.
So this is a text that I got this morning from someone who works for an NHL team, not a manager. Okay, not a manager. Just putting that out there because it's a joke text, and I kind of laughed this morning when I got it when I woke up. But I'll throw it to you and see if I can see what reaction you have. If you could trade Darnell Nurse for Gustav Forsling and Jack Roslovic for Robert Thomas, could you still win with the Oilers? Net minding, I say no. That was the text that I got this morning from someone from an NHL team, not from any of the teams with those players named. But what's Edmonton doing here? Like it seems as if every night they got to score a nickel to win a game. Last night again, the same thing. What happens here? Like, do they just let Szymanski run with the third line and then look at the goaltending again? Or I've been of the mind that they've made their goalie move and it's ride or die. But as we keep seeing the goals against pile up, I wonder about that. You ever thought on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I was of the same belief as you that they got Jari and that's who they're going to roll with for at least the rest of this season. Um, Unless something completely falls into their lap with St. Louis and Binnington, I think that's a bit of a stretch because they'll have to effectively move Jari out in order to make money work. And then there's going to be other pieces involved because that won't make the whole cap hit work. I guess you can convince St. Louis to retain on that contract, but what are you compensating them for in order to do it? And there are too many pieces involved. So, they add Murphy on the back end, which I liked, and they're looking for another forward. Now, it seemed like it was only going to be a 3C. If they were going to go after a Nick Waugh or a Scott Laughton out of Toronto or somebody like that, shore up the bottom six and keep Nuge on the left. But it wouldn't surprise me if they also bring in an affordable guy to play the wing. And that circles back to Toronto with Bobby McMahon at $1.35 million. Waugh's at $3 million. Laughton's at $1.5 million. They have 2 retention slots left. In Toronto, actually, they may have all 3. Needless to say, if they want to get creative and financially creative, there might be a couple of moves or a couple players they can make in one move with Toronto in order to pull that off. But again, what's the opportunity cost there, and are they willing to pay it? I think they're focused on that now. I think they're focused on bringing in at least a forward. They're still actively trying to trade Andrew Mangiapane. They want to free up an additional $1.5 million at least by moving him out. And they're engaged in that. So still a lot of balls up in the air for the Edmonton Oilers and Stan Bowman, but they're trying. They're trying to address that position right now. And again, barring something just completely falling into their lap, that's probably the direction they go in between now and Friday's deadline.
Let me throw a name out at you. And this is with the Florida Panthers. Like, really, the Panthers have been out of it for a while here. But like, the Panthers aren't making the playoffs. Okay, it's going to be a small little step back, and they're going to reload and they come right back at it. I don't think anyone thinks for 1 second that the Panthers not making the playoffs means like, well, that's it for the franchise. No one would be surprised if they come back and win the whole thing next year when they get healthy and change their lineup a little bit. So we wonder about AJ Greer, we wonder about Sergei Bobrovsky, and with Edmonton specifically, whenever you talk about the Oilers, they need like this piece and that piece and someone at this spot and all that. And I wonder, can you solve all of your issues up front to some extent if you go to Florida about Evan Rodriguez?
Yeah.
1 more year.
$3 million cap hit. Yeah. Good piece.
Versatile. Really versatile player.
Not as, how do I put this? Not as disliked as Adrian Greer might be with that organization.
What are you talking about?
So might be a better fit, more welcomed type of addition. But at $3 million and where they're at, again, they'll have to finagle the cap. Anything basically over $1.5 million, they're gonna have to find a home for Mangiapane. And again, that's a priority for them. And I still checking on it this morning. There's still an expectation that's going to happen between now and the deadline. I think the waivers thing might confuse a few people. It was primarily because they had the Murphy deal. They knew Janmark was going on LTIR. They needed to make the money work at the time. So that's why that happened. But they still are aiming to trade him, and that's the goal, and that's the expectation that it's going to happen. That would allow them a lot more flexibility to potentially do an Evan Rodriguez type of thing. But they also really like him in Florida, Jeff. Like they talked about this at the start of the season before they had additional injuries when camp got underway, that, debating what was happening with Tkachuk in terms of timeline. There were teams that were curious about Rodriguez, and he was out there, at least from other teams poking around. And, Bill Zito kind of held firm on it. So it might take convincing, but in terms of type of player, I think without a doubt, that'd be the type of player they'd love to add to their roster in Edmonton. I just don't know. It might be a little tricky, A, financially, but B, also, the Cats still like the guy.
What did you make of all the Robert Thomas situation from yesterday? Now, the Robert Thomas situation continues. I don't think that the issue has gone anywhere, but at least perhaps on pause right now is the Buffalo Sabres end of all of it. We can look at Utah, we can look at Seattle, we can look at perhaps Montreal as well. You could make the argument for Boston, although I don't think they'll have the same type of package that they'd be willing to part with to bring in Robert Thomas, but we'll see. What did you make of Robert Thomas Day yesterday? And what do you make of the rest of Robert Thomas week here?
Yeah, I think it'll still keep going. Little pause in discussions, negotiation tactic, see who comes crawling back kind of thing. And look, it's a steep price, and I get it. And I believe the player from Utah that St. Louis is looking at is Desnoyers, who was 4th overall last year in the draft. And I think there's a willingness to explore that, but I don't know how much more Utah would be willing to add to that mix, because I've heard there's interest in Iginla. I heard there was some interest in Simashev, and I don't expect either of those two guys to be going anywhere, quite frankly. But yeah, it sounds like there's at least a willingness to consider Desnoyers as part of a package, but what else needs to be added to the mix? And that's what Utah's kind of been going back and forth on with the Blues. And then of course, all the Buffalo stuff going on there. There was chatter of Owen Power. There was talk of some of their Hellenius and a couple other of their top kids. I think there's a pathway to reconvene, but I don't know this definitively, but I'm curious if things got a little too big, and that's why things temporarily have been put on pause or temporarily derailed, because they're also looking at Parayko and or Falk. There's interest in both of those guys from Buffalo's side, and maybe things got a little bit too big. And you got to just, hit pause. Let's hit a reset here, and let's try to get back to the basics. Maybe they focus on D as opposed to Thomas, or as opposed to a combo. But Buffalo's got a lot of irons in the fire right now. It doesn't look like they're signing Alex Tuck. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen between now and the deadline, barring a huge change from their side, the Sabres side. It looks like he's going to go past the deadline without an extension, but they have no intention of trading him either. Again, anything is possible. Somebody comes and blows their socks off, different ballgame. But the intent right now is to hold on to Tuck, even without an extension in place beyond the deadline. They'll worry about that in the summer. So he effectively comes off the board, and they focus on other areas. There was some talk of looking at depth. I mentioned Lawton and Roy. I think Buffalo's looking at that caliber player for their bottom six. But obviously, when you get an opportunity to bring in a guy like Thomas or even somebody on the back end, to improve things, that might take priority. But I think they'll circle back on that if they haven't already. But also take into account the discussions around D and what they'd like to do on that back end to try to improve it. Yarmo's not messing around.
One of the really quick, because you were all over this the beginning of the season. Kiefer Sherwood and the contract extension with the San Jose Sharks, 575 times 5, according to CJ. Ever thought on that one? You've been all over Sherwood all year.
Yeah, I mentioned on at least Morning Take with our boy Alberga this morning that they were finalizing a 5-year deal. It was getting down to that, and it looked like there was. I think when they first had those discussions after the trade from Vancouver, because they weren't allowed to talk prior, that everyone was going, "Ooh, I didn't think you wanted that much," and his side went, "I don't think you were willing to go that low." But then obviously you find the gap, and you find that he's meshed well on and off the ice so far with his career, limited on ice, but. Off ice, he's meshed well, with that group. Yeah, decent. I mean, he was great last night.
He really was.
Great last night with the Canadians. Against the Canadians. Yeah. And that kind of, it seemed that maybe that put the stamp of approval on things. But they really liked him. There's a reason why they went after him. They lock it in here on that 5-year deal, and everybody's kind of happy. And San Jose can focus on other areas because they're looking at, this is another team looking at defense, and they're looking at younger guys and veterans, but controllable, either under contract or RFA status on the young guys, or guys with extended term from a veteran presence to add to that blue line. And if they can't get it now, they'll do it in the summer. But that's a priority for Mike Rear and the Sharks.
Detroit Red Wings. I was mentioning to Berkey before he came on. No go on Quinn, Raz Anderson, Tyler Myers. We know they're looking for a defenseman. That's not exactly they'd probably a top 6 forward too.
Right shot. Yeah.
But yeah, right. But 0 for 3. It happens. On the one hand, you can just say Steve Eisman has his prices, and Listen, the price for Quinn Hughes was astronomical, and Bill Guerin was willing to pay it, where Steve Yzerman wasn't, so Guerin gets the player. But you're the Detroit Red Wings, and we all remember what happened last year with Dylan Larkin and Steve Yzerman. Larkin essentially saying, like, where were the reserves? Like, how come you didn't send the posse? And Yzerman saying, well, essentially, you didn't deserve it. And that's why I didn't do it. But this year, like, the Red Wings deserve it. Like, we expect Detroit to do something based on what they've done this year to put themselves in a position to finally get some playoff games in the, I don't want to call it new rink, Little Caesars Arena.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, these teams try, and they strike out, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times before they get their guy. Just seem to be a little more publicized with Detroit, which I'm sure Stevie's thrilled about. But another guy, if they're going to pivot, they've expressed interest in Rasmus Ristolainen. And with 1 year left on his contract, $5.1 million, maybe that's the approach they go. Maybe they circle in that direction. I think him more so than a guy like Falk, presumably. But I know for sure that they've checked in on Ristolainen a few times, and it wouldn't shock me if they go back in this direction. It was like I mentioned earlier, it was about Monday when they didn't have an answer about Tyler Myers that they said, all right, we this has gone on for quite a bit. We're still in this, but if we find another option, we're going in that direction. And Myers actually beat them. They've been compiling additional options. They're engaged in those right now. But it's not only the decor, Jeff. I think it's up front too. Like they're looking up front. Depending who you talk to, they're real about Thomas. They're kind of in it. Again, depending who you talk to. I don't know if they go hunting in that big of a pond. But they are looking at other guys to bring in, and it sounds like center is a priority. But I don't think it's the be-all, end-all. If they bring in a winger that fits the top six, they can do that, especially on that right side. I think they can do that. But it sounds like center might be a priority. But again, we'll see what they end up doing. I think they're going to do something. I think they're going to probably address both areas. To what degree of player, it's hard to gauge.
Okay, quickly, a couple of names I'll throw out at you. Simon Nemec. Like, if Quinn Hughes was going to the New Jersey Devils, Simon Nemec would have been part of the package, we would assume, that would be going back instead of Yves Boyen with the Minnesota Wild. Simon Nemec's availability here, Dave.
Yeah, that picked up over the last few weeks after Olympics, and for decent reason. He, hell of a player. But I mean, his stock overall has dropped a little bit over the last season or two, but still valued as a very high asset. And New Jersey's priority is finding somebody to put the puck in the net. They've got guys on paper that seem to be able to do it. It hasn't translated in real life and on the ice. So priority for them is to bring in an offensive weapon for this club, but somebody controllable with term, especially if you're dealing with a guy like Nemec. Dawson Mercer's name has kind of popped in and out of discussions this season. I'm not sure where that stands right now, but I'm sure they're going to listen because they want to address, again, they want to bring in somebody to play with Jack that can put the puck in the net. Presumably on that right side, you got Bratt, him, and someone. That someone is what they're trying to fill ideally. And Nemec is a player that they're listing on. I don't know how far along those conversations have gotten to this point. I'm curious about Jordan Kyrou in St. Louis because there are teams that are still poking on him, and he would fit the bill for the caliber of player that the Devils want. Can they put something together that makes sense? I guess we got to wait.
Okay, last team here, and this is perhaps is a tough decision for Don Waddell, but his team has put together 2 wins in a row here. One against the Rangers, where they went up for a Cobb and they had to hang on and win it in overtime. And then last night they beat the Nashville Predators, and that is the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are sort of picking at the edges of a playoff spot here. The out-of-town scoreboard didn't help them. The Bruins beat the Penguins yesterday. Columbus kept pace, but that still Columbus has 22 games left, and 13 of them are against playoff teams. And they have decisions to make, whether it's Mason Marchment, Boone Jenner, Charlie Coyle, Eric Goodbranson. Like, we're used to the Blue Jackets being out of it by now and wondering where all these players are going to end up. But this year it's tighter, and they've made the coach move with Rick Bowness and the 7-game win streak before the Olympic break, and now they've strung 2 back-to-back together. They got one more game before the deadline on Friday, which is against the Florida Panthers. Do you have an idea of which way the Blue Jackets are leaning here? Like, I think the playoff percentage is like, is it like around like 40, between like 48 to 52%?
It's not horrible.
For Columbus. It's not horrible, but
not ideal. Yeah. I mean, you know, they feel they like their team. They feel they're a playoff team. And especially after bringing Bones in and making the change, you know, behind the bench and getting everybody to click, they feel that there's enough there to be a playoff team. Whether there's enough runway, I don't know. They did tell their guys after, you know, having conversations back and forth that let's table these discussions, these extension discussions until after the season. Presumably you're still going to stick around. So we'll have those talks afterwards. Let's focus on making the playoffs. And I get that. That makes sense. Very similar to what's happened in Seattle, where although they're in a playoff spot, they told their free agents, unless we're blown away, you're staying. We have no intention of actually moving you.
Yeah.
Same. It sounds like it's a similar situation in Columbus, unless there's an offer that they just comes out of left field and they didn't expect and they have to consider. I think they want to roll with this group and try to push for that playoff spot because they feel they can maintain this level of play. Mm-hmm. Maybe not, you know, 800 hockey, but at least maintain a very sound, efficient level of performance that is worthy of you know, being a playoff team. So I think that's where they're kind of sitting. You know, the market would love to get back in the postseason. Certainly that fan base, it's fun. Let that cannon go nuts come playoff time. But I think they feel that they have enough horses there to make it happen. I don't know if they're going to add anything in that regard unless it's a hockey type acquisition that makes sense in terms of controllability and term.
Yeah.
But in terms of their pending UFAs, unless they're blown away, I think they want to hold on to them because they really like their chances.
Should point out, too, those back-to-back wins for Columbus this week, both done without Zach Werenski, who was sick for both of those. So maybe they just stick with it and they say, you know what, we'll try to sign what we can. Yeah. We'll see.
And I will add, just quickly as well, because they did scratch Kent Johnson for a couple of games. They made it clear. I reached out about. They made it clear they have no intention to trade him.
Vancouver,
they just want him.
Sorry, what? Vancouver, what?
Yeah, maybe. They're saying they have no intention of trading him. We'll see. Yeah. But this is more message sending, trying to get him on track. Again, somebody blows him out of the water. They'll listen. But that was the message being brought.
That one still baffles. He is so skilled. That guy is so talented. Yeah. That one is the one that really that really baffles me. But nonetheless, hope that he can turn things around. All right, great stuff as always. Appreciate the contributions. And early this week as well, we've got trade deadline on Friday, where you will be front and center on our trade deadline coverage. Thanks as always, Dave. You be good. Rest up.
See you in a couple days.
See you, pal. There he is. Dave Pagnotta will be aboard for us here at DFO for our trade deadline special that gets underway Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, as we've been telling you about. And as always, on all of our programs, the Puckpedia trade ticker continues to roll through all of our broadcasts here. Had Hart Levine on the program yesterday with Craig Wyshynski, and there it is. Watch live March 6th, 11 a.m. Eastern. That is 9 Mountain, 8 Pacific, right here at our Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. Trade deadline, all the comings and goings and the fallout afterwards. All right, Zach, what did we leave out today? Anything?
No, I think we pretty much got everything. I've been trying to monitor as much
I've been getting your texts
and sending you everything as it's coming through. So I think we've hit it all. I think we touched on every team and corner that we needed to for today. I'm pretty happy with today's show, Jeff, to be honest with you.
So far, so good. And now 5 minutes from now, as we go off the air, there's going to be a monster trade, and this podcast will be irrelevant.
Yeah, that deal that you were talking about yesterday, the quote board I put together, you said something along the lines of, I think there's one more biggie. I think that was the exact quote I grabbed from you. That's going to be what comes from the Edmonton
Oilers. What, for Edmonton?
Like 30 seconds after we go off air.
I'm going to go on with Tyler and Liam here in a couple of seconds, but I just kind of get the feeling that, in a season where the Pacific Division is as soft as it is, and Vegas lost again last night. It came close, but they lost to the Buffalo Sabres. But everybody loses to the Buffalo Sabres. I get it. And as we were pointing out yesterday, Gregor mentioning on Rundown that Vegas hasn't beaten a playoff team since November the 20th. Like in a season where it's right there for you to just steamroll right through the Pacific Division. How does Edmonton not make a significant move? We shall see by the time Friday rolls around. I really have a hard time believing that Stan Bowman sits there with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and says, powder dry. Even though he is right up against the cap. We talked a lot about this yesterday. We'll continue to talk about the Oilers here on the broadcast, but nonetheless, that's kind of where I'm at now. You surprised that your bestie is not in Buffalo today?
Yeah, a little bit. When we saw the heating up conversations start taking place yesterday, I was like, this is gonna happen. Like, this is a matter of time. And you and I wrapped the show yesterday, and
he's gonna haunt Toronto and Montreal forever when he shows up in Buffalo.
No, I know. And then you know what compounded that and made it worse? Somebody I think you might know them, Elliot Friedman. He said
vaguely familiar
on his show. He said something along the lines of, Toronto was interested in the idea of getting players and flipping them for assets here and doesn't think that'll be the case, but brought up the name of Robert Thomas as being a player that they could have potentially acquired and then flipped. And I was like, you might as well have photoshopped me into Marc-Andre Fleury with the sword through my back when I read that. I thought, if Robert Thomas was a Maple Leaf for 30 seconds and he was gone, that would haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one if he just acted as a fence for Robert Thomas and sent him somewhere else and picked up a couple of assets. Yeah, that'd be a tough one. I remember when Elliot first met Robert. I was in Regina for Memorial Cup, and he was playing on the Bulldogs at that point. Nice hat. That's when they were in Hamilton, and we did a full hour. Peggy Chapman, who was doing media relations for the Bulldogs, still works the organization, hooked it all up, and we went to a CBC affiliate in Regina and did the 32 Thoughts pod from there with Elliot in Toronto, and that's where Elliot met Robert Thomas. And now he's talking about Toronto being a fence for him.
Yeah, I was like, okay, thanks, Elliot. Let's retract that one, remove it from the internet, pretend it never happened. I didn't need to know that.
That Hamilton team was so good. Acadie Bathurst was excellent. Noah Dobson on the team, et cetera, Jeffrey Truchon VL. But man, Hamilton was so good. I thought they were going to steamroll everybody. Yeah. Matt Strome on that team too. Oh, that was a good team. Anywho,
yeah, that's right.
Right. Good team. Good junior team. The sheet is powered by FanDuel. Play your game with FanDuel. From Blue Line to Bet Slip. Oh, nope, it's the NHL season. FanDuel, your home for all the action on the ice. There you go, Marek. From Blue Line to Bet Slip, we've got you covered all season with unique promos, live offerings, and more features to let you play your game. If you miss puck drop, don't sweat it. You got a live same-game parlay. Build your bets up until the final buzzer. Download FanDuel Sportsbook today and play your game. Please play responsibly as well. 18 plus, physically located in Ontario. If you have questions or concerns about your gambling or the gambling of someone close to you, please contact Connects Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge. You have parlays on players that get traded?
Oh, we'll see here.
You got one? Is that what you're doing?
I tried to. No. I tried to see what FanDuel had for players that would be moved, and I figured it's probably just best if I avoid that for today. I might try that and see what we can get for tomorrow. But there's a player involved here who I think could potentially be on the move. He is on our DFO trade board that you saw on the ticker that was going across all show here. But
yep.
Jeff, ahead of the trade deadline here, 2 days away, the one thing we keep looking for is a big splash.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone here wants to see a Hughes move, but a Hughes move pales in comparison to the right move.
You got Ryan Poehling in there. Oh, look at you. Oh, wow.
Hughes,
so 2 goals for Jack Hughes.
Yeah, they're playing the Leafs. The Leafs The Leafs are a hockey team. They go on the ice. That's
Of
what
all the teams
They
I've
are
ever
there.
seen, the Leafs are one of them.
They will be wearing uniforms tonight. That is the most I could say about the Maple Leafs. I feel like Jack Hughes, who traditionally does well against the Maple Leafs, may have himself a night. Throw in Ryan Poehling and Shane Wright. Just up the value here ahead of the trades deadline. That's why I said a player who we could be looking at.
Pales in comparison, eh?
Yes, to the right move.
Ryan Poehling. $5 wins you $1,473.40 to stick in your jeans, Zach Phillips. To stick in your jeans. All right. Anything you're curious about in the next couple of days here? Anything really top of mind? I know you're curious about what your team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, are going to do. I mean, that snake will shed skin. I think this is subtraction, not addition, for the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's more than safe to say. But what else are you interested in out there?
Well, I think the one question I have, and I know it's more of a broader question, but it's what's the domino this year that has to fall? Is it a Robert Thomas trade? Is it the Vinny Trocheck trade? Like, which is the one trade that you think has to happen here for the floodgates to open? And I'm not saying that this gets nuts this year. This could be an underwhelming trade deadline, but it feels like every season there's one that happens, and then everyone's like, okay, it's off the board, let's go now. I look at last year, the Brock Nelson one for me seemed like the one that kind of opened things up a little bit ahead, and it made the Scott Lawton to Toronto trade a little bit easier to navigate after that. You started to see where the pieces were going to fall and what teams were looking at what. Which is the one for you this year that you look at and you say, that's the player that has to move for everything else to free up?
That's interesting. Perhaps Robert Thomas. I'll tell you what. If Elias Pettersson goes, that could be one that produces a chain reaction, especially if Elias Pettersson goes to a team like the Carolina Hurricanes, because then it's like, okay, attention to everybody else in the Eastern Conference, attention to everybody else in the Metropolitan Division. Mm-hmm. That could be the interesting one.
Okay, I have a second question. Not about Pettersson, but you said Rob. In your opinion, why are they trading Robert Thomas? 5 years left, 26 years old, a great contract.
I don't know.
Why are you trading this guy? That seems like the type of player you want there.
Listen, to me, this is an absolute head scratcher. Is there an issue between the player and the manager? Well, the manager is going to be gone this year, and there's a new manager in Alex Steen next year. So I'm with you. Like, I am shocked that we're at a point here where, and that's why I think that there should be, and there probably are, we're just not aware of it, way more teams than the ones that are public right now about wanting to bring in Robert Thomas. And here's why. Given how underwhelming free agency is going to be this year, specifically with forwards, where right now it looks like the race to get Alex Tuch, and like, who knows, maybe he does end up re-signing with the Buffalo Sabres, as Dave mentioned. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. But if right now, the way that if you want to improve quickly, it generally for most teams is going to be with a trade. How do you not get in the conversation? Like, if you're Carolina, how do you not get in the conversation? And maybe they are for Robert Thomas. If you're, in any team, really, around the NHL, not exclusive to the Western Conference or Eastern Conference, how are you not interested? How is this not like a massive auction here? Unless this is the St. Louis Blues saying to themselves, we need to tear this thing down. And we can get we get a good return for Jordan Kyrou. We can get a massive return for Robert Thomas. And we're willing to go through some pain here. We do have a number of players in the organization and on the roster that are going to be here when this team actualizes into a consistently good team that competes for playoff spots. I don't know. Unless you're planning on just taking this thing down to the studs. And maybe that's just it. But I don't know why you would let go of a guy like Robert Thomas. But if a guy like Thomas is available, you owe it to your organization to take a swing. Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, it's the one thing that's puzzling me. And the more I talk about the value, or, we've talked about it on After Dark for my show, and the boys have brought it up on Morning Take and everything, the more you talk about the value of the player, it's like,
oh,
yeah, what the hell are we doing? Like, why are, if you're a St. Louis fan, I'm sure, our guy J-Rock in the chat is a very vocal Blues fan. I'm sure he sees that and is kind of like, what the hell is going on? Why is this a player we're looking to move on from?
Unless you just want to take this,
your points are
unless
valid,
you just want to
but
burn all of it, and you're just like you're gonna go do like the Chicago San Jose rebuild, and maybe that's it, and maybe that's it, but that's the only thing I can come up with.
But and it's a fair point. It's a fair point. I just look at it too, and I wonder, even on that player aside, the general construct of it. Okay, that's great. You bring back younger pieces, and you have some in the system already. But then what are you looking for after that? You're like, okay, let's bring in some veteran guys who, have some experience. Oh, there was the 26-year-old we had who won at every single level. Mm-hmm. Oh, that seems like a pretty obvious choice to keep around here and be a voice in the locker room. I mean, I'm not in the locker room. I don't know what that voice is exactly like, but yeah, it just seemed like a puzzling one here right now, especially the more it picks up. But hey,
here's another one. Zach Anderson, 6504. For Robert Thomas, I would give up Forster, Lachenko, 2026 first rounder, 2027 first rounder. First of all, Flyers love Forster. I can't see them giving up Tyson Forster, and he's really good. But still, but that's the level of trade that we're talking about, and that's why, if you're starting a rebuild, again, if Doug is saying, okay, Alex wants this thing from scratch, we expect Kyrou to be gone. We expect Falk, maybe Parayko, Bennington. Big names are moving here. But Robert Thomas is the big haul. If you really want to, supercharge a rebuild, Thomas is your guy. So maybe that's it. But I don't know. I'm head scratching on this one.
You think it would be preemptive tampering? Would that be a new word we could create here, a new phrase we could create if Doug Armstrong trades him to
a team that he goes to?
Team, like the Toronto Maple Leafs? I don't know. Just throwing things out there, Jeff. Yeah, don't mind me.
Just take a measly return, a couple of seconds, and then Doug Armstrong. Okay,
No?
That's tonight on After Dark. That conversation and more on After Dark this evening, immediately following the Maple Leafs New Jersey Devils game. On that, we'll wrap. Thanks for joining us once again today. Thanks to Brian Burke, who stops by every Wednesday here at this program for Civilian Wednesdays. And thanks to Dave Pagnotta, as always, who's going to be front and center on Friday at our trade deadline coverage. Hope you can join us. If not, spend the whole time with us, at least a little bit of your day with us here at DFO. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for chatting. Thanks to everyone taking part in this. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you. If not, please consider doing so. We are back with more trade talk tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. Whatever happens between now and then will be on the table when we rejoin you tomorrow in 23 hours-ish, somewhere around there. Talk to you tomorrow. Jeff Marek along with you. Hope you enjoyed the program today. If you did, or maybe even if you didn't, they can't all be gems, folks. Please hit the subscribe button. Also a reminder, every morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, Johnny Lazarus, Colby Cohen, I call them the Impact Players. You might know them as a tandem that makes up the Morning Cup of Hockey. Also DFO Live at noon Eastern. This year, your host Tyler Yaremchuk alongside Carter Hutton. Full day's worth of programming right here on Daily Faceoff, your favorite YouTube hockey channel. And as a reminder as well, Zach Phillips, our producer here for The Sheet, said if you subscribe, he'll buy you a puppy. It's true.